Hello, everyone. Since we're all talking about bitchy MILs, I'd like to share my story too. I get that birthing a child is really difficult, and it's kind of hard to accept that they've grown and have their own opinions. But some women feel extra entitled to their kids. They also extend the same entitlement to their sons-in-law and daughters-in-law. It's really hard to deal with such situations because, in the end, it's your husband's mom, and guys love their mom a lot no matter what they do. I just don't know where to vent. I'm Anisha, 26F, and I live with my husband, Raghav, 27M. We've had a great marriage up until my MIL, 57F, decided to move in with us. My MIL was very sweet to me before she moved in with us. And then she started showing her true colors, and I found her to be a caring old bitch who wanted to control me. She forced me and my husband to change rooms. She would force her patriarchal mindset on me in the name of tradition. She even insulted my parents and blamed them for being bad parents and not teaching me how to be a good daughter-in-law. My sister-in-law, 30F, moved in with us after deciding to split with her husband, but wouldn't send him a notice. My SIL and MIL made my life hell, and I was burdened with chores. They would taunt me if my husband would help. Tired of their drama, I hired a maid who had to stand their torture too. I decided to record them when my husband went on a trip, but what I found was shocking. I found my MIL stealing from our savings. I gave them the ultimatum to leave the country or go to jail. My family is of Indian origin, but I was born here in the US. I never thought I'd marry someone Indian, but then I met Raghav, and I felt attracted to him because I could feel some relevance with him. With him, it didn't feel odd, so I fell head over heels in love with him. Raghav was from India. He'd come here for his further education, and we joined the same company at the same time. We dated each other for 2 years, and we had our ups and downs, but then we decided to get married. Raghav's parents insisted we get married in India. The wedding was a grand affair, and I had never been to an Indian wedding before. I was suddenly overwhelmed by all these traditions and rituals. Much to my surprise, my parents, Mom, 49F, and Dad, 53M, had saved up a huge amount of money for my wedding, and both families ensured it would be a grand celebration. My family had bought so much jewelry for me. I asked them why they were spending so much. They just said it's tradition. My in-laws were extremely happy about the wedding. My parents bought them a lot of gifts, and I didn't really appreciate them. My parents insisted that it was tradition to give the in-laws gifts. I was expecting them to give my parents gifts too, since Raghav's family wasn't poor either, but they received nothing. I didn't really pay heed to it, but the amount of money my parents spent on a wedding really bothered me. Raghav and I came back to the US for work since we had taken a really long holiday for the wedding preparations. My parents stayed back to meet all our relatives that they hadn't met in a really long time. After a few months, we took another holiday and went on our honeymoon in Europe. We came back from our honeymoon and moved into our new house. We spent a lot of our money on the house, but we were completely debt-free. Both our parents were extremely proud of us. Raghav's parents had never come to visit him, so Raghav planned that his parents would visit. Unfortunately, my father-in-law, 67, passed away. I couldn't get time off work, so Raghav visited his house in India for the funeral. When he came back home, he brought his mother with him so that she wouldn't feel lonely. I wanted to make the move comfortable for her, as she was in a completely new place and was dealing with the pain of her husband passing away. We gave her the other room we had in the house, but she ordered us to give her our room because we had a bathroom in ours. Raghav and I obliged, and we went through the hassle of changing rooms. We thought that she would now be comfortable enough, but she had an issue with climbing into the bathtub. It was a legitimate issue, so we had to get the bathtub removed and have a shower cubicle installed instead. After that, her demands just began increasing. She had an issue with everything and wanted everything her way. She hated our vacuum cleaner because it made a lot of noise, so she ordered me to broom the house instead. She didn't like the food I cooked, so she insisted she cook, and she rearranged my whole kitchen her way. My MIL's constant interference in our marital life had started to irk me. I casually asked Raghav how long she'd be staying. Raghav said he'll talk to her about when she wants to leave. When Raghav asked her when she wanted to leave, she threw a tantrum, screaming that her son wanted to kick her out. She blamed the whole argument on me and said that I had influenced her son to kick her out. After the argument, she made it clear that she was going to stay, much to my dismay. My MIL would constantly find faults in my cleaning and cooking. She expected me to come home and give my husband water and tea while he sat on the couch and rested. We worked at the same company and came home at the same time, so it seemed unfair. Raghav and I have always split the chores, but my mill insisted that I do the chores because he is the breadwinner of the family. I argued with her that I worked too, to which she said that my job wasn't that important. She went on ranting about how educated women were a boon to society and undutiful towards their husbands. I spoke to Raghav about it, and he explained that she's just been conditioned to believe things like that and asked me to ignore her. He said he couldn't say anything to his mom, but he promised to stick up for me as much as he could. My parents visited my house to meet my mill and give condolences to my Phil. She started getting rather angry about how my parents and I didn't visit the funeral, and it was wrong of us. To my surprise, my parents apologized to her and admitted it was wrong of us not to visit, especially me. I was extremely furious. My mill went on bitching about me and complained that my parents failed to raise me and instill the values I needed in me. My parents didn't really like what she said, but they weren't replying to her. Raghav intervened and told his mother to stop talking. My mill then shamed Raghav for siding with his wife. Raghav apologized to my parents and me for her behavior. My parents told us to take care, and they left. My mill commented on how wrong it is for parents to visit their daughter's house after she's married. I was shocked at the weird traditions and superstitions they had. I hated her and wanted to get rid of her at once. Raghav did stick up for me when my mill said cruel stuff to me, but I didn't want her around at all. I couldn't tell Raghav to kick his mom out, but I also couldn't ruin my mental health and life because of her. She just didn't want to leave. I started getting used to her antics and ignoring her every day. My sister-in-law, Reeta, decided to divorce her husband, Jay, 35M. She claimed that Jay would physically abuse her and wouldn't give her any money. She lived in a different state and moved in with us on my mill's insistence. She wanted to have kids, but Jay wouldn't let her, and he would push her around and throw hands when he got angry. Obviously, I supported her and said that she must divorce him. I made her feel welcome. I thought she would stay in the same room her mom took, but she insisted on having her own room. My mill made us leave our rooms and sleep in the living room while she took our bedroom. It was pissing me off that we moved rooms 3 times just to accommodate Raghav's family. And according to my mill, my parents weren't even allowed to visit, but they can come marching into our house and kick us out of our own rooms. There were too many people in my house to manage along with work, but my mill expected me to do all the work. I came home tired from work and then had to cook for 4 because Raghav isn't really a good cook. Raghav tried his best to help me. He does the laundry and puts the dishes in the dishwasher, but my mom hates that he has to do the house chores. Reeta makes a huge mess every day. When I come home, her stuff will be lying everywhere around the house. She'd complain about not having space to keep her stuff, so my mill made us move our stuff in suitcases into the living room, and she put all her stuff in our cupboard. We had literally started living out of suitcases in our own house and were expected to cook and clean for them. It had been weeks since Reeta moved in, but she wasn't sending the divorce notice. We kept trying to convince her to send the notice, but she was hesitant. Reeta was a stay-at-home wife, but Raghav convinced her to get a job since she couldn't sustain herself for long without one. My mill shouted at Raghav and told him that we had enough money to take care of her. She told Raghav that it was his responsibility to take care of Reeta, since she was recovering from her pain. Reeta threw a tantrum and acted like she didn't feel wanted in the house. She started skipping meals and threatened to leave the house. My mill argued with Raghav and me and told us that we had to try our best to make Reeta feel wanted. I told my mill she could go if she liked, and no one needed to stop her. My mill made a whole deal about it and fought with me for wanting to kick her out. This caused an argument between me and Raghav too, and he told me I couldn't talk back to his mom and his sister. I refused to stay quiet, and we would constantly bicker about everything. I felt bad about it, but Raghav was the one who got caught in between. He wanted to help me as much as he could, but my MIL wanted to be a bitch and would start being melodramatic to gain sympathy from Raghav. I decided not to drag Raghav into our arguments, but my MIL would complain to him every time we argued. He had to intervene, and if he didn't side with them, my mill would pretend to want to kill herself. Reeta would then shout at Raghav for wanting his mom to die and being disrespectful towards her. My only thoughts at the time were regret that I had married into the family. I got a promotion at work, so I decided to decrease the hassle I went through and hired a maid, 42F, who would help clean the house. Raghav and I decided that we would only cook, and the rest of the chores would be done by the maid. My mill resented the maid. but my SIL would order her around the entire day and trouble her for the smallest of things. She would even ask her to pick up the stuff she dropped off. My maid was a really nice lady who didn't really pay heed to her behavior. I kept apologizing to her, but she just said it's okay, and that's how they're treated. No person should have to go through that treatment. I gave my maid the authority to say no and only do the chores I gave her. This irked my Mill and Reeta because they had no power. They would deliberately make a mess and trouble the maid. I was really getting pushed past my limits. I warned Raghav that they needed to leave. The fact that we were having to sleep in the living room meant that our relationship lacked intimacy. We were constantly arguing and fighting over texts at work. We saw each other the whole day but weren't able to communicate. It was getting very frustrating. Things were going downhill in our relationship. He was being supportive, but he wasn't doing enough to protect me against his mom and his sister. He would side with them in arguments just to keep the peace. I had started thinking about giving him a divorce, but I really wanted to make it work at the same time. I love him a lot, and my issue isn't with him, it's with his mom and his inability to stick up for me. Raghav had to go on a work trip and would be gone for a couple of weeks. I didn't really want to stay alone with his mom and Reeta, but I had no choice. Raghav told Reeta to send Jay a notice and that they'll proceed with the divorce after he's back. Reeta acted strange and was hesitant to send the notice to Jay. As soon as Raghav left, my MIL and Reeta started fighting with me. They didn't let me touch anything in my own house, and I made myself stay in the living room. I argued back to them eventually, but the fights seemed to get worse and worse. I didn't want to go to the lengths of kicking them out of the house while Raghav was gone. They had nowhere else to go, and it seemed wrong. My mill challenged me to get rid of myself and find a new wife for my husband because I wasn't good enough for him. Reeta agreed, and they told me to watch out. They thought that I would get scared, and it would work on me. Most of their ill treatment towards me started when Raghav wasn't around, so I wanted to ensure that Raghav found out how they treated me. I decided that if he would still side with them after seeing how they were treating me, I would divorce him. I decided that I would pretend to be nice to them. They loved my nice behavior towards them, but were still abusive towards me. I gave them money and told them to go shopping for themselves. They went to an Indian market, which was a 45-minute bus ride away. I had enough time to rig the house with baby monitors. When they came back home, I slowly transitioned to my normal behavior, and I recorded 2 weeks of footage of how badly they were treating me along with my maid. They said all sorts of mean things to me and my maid. I even saw them push the maid a couple of times. I was moved to tears by their abusive behavior when I played the recordings. One thing I noticed, in particular, was that my mill was taking cash out of our savings jar bit by bit. She also forced us to give the keys to our safe because it's tradition for the matriarch to have the house keys. She was slowly taking our emergency funds too. We have kept aside a huge amount of cash in case we have an emergency. I took the clippings from my mill and confronted her. She said she was doing it so that she could give the money to Reeta. I was astonished at the bullshit reasons she was giving me. I threatened that I would call the police and put her and Reeta in jail for harassing me and stealing money because now I had evidence. My mill and Reeta begged me not to. So I told them that I'd let them go only if they left the country and went back to India. I didn't want them at my house at all, and I didn't even want them to visit me. My mill agreed to leave, but Reeta asked us for more time until her divorce. When Raghav came back, I showed him the recordings of them attacking me and stealing. Raghav made them apologize to the maid too. He was shocked that his mom was stealing from her own son's house. He finally stood up for me and told me that it was my hard-earned money too, not just her son's, and she couldn't steal. He booked flight tickets and immediately sent her home. We took our bedroom back and Reeta stayed in the guest bedroom. Raghav told Reeta that she had to get a divorce and find a job. My mill left, but Reeta was still staying at our house until she got a divorce. I told her to watch it, but she was still being a bitch to me. Raghav and I decided we would communicate our issues, but he's pissed at me that I would go to the lengths of recording his mom instead of just talking to him. He said that his mom isn't a criminal, and I replied that stealing money sounded pretty criminal enough to me. I thought that getting rid of my mill would solve the issues between us, but it got worse, and we had a lot of opportunities to talk it out, which we didn't before, but he just didn't want to communicate. Reeta keeps filling Raghav's ears about how I'm a bad wife and a good wife should be forgiving towards her in-laws. Raghav doesn't really reply to her, but I feel like he seems to agree. I'm turning to you guys about what to do. I was thinking about divorcing him, but I don't really want to. I really love him and I want to mend our relationship. Update 1. Hello everyone. So I have an update on my personal story I shared about my mill and SIL. I thought things would get better after my mill left, but they didn't. My husband is pissed at me because I went to such lengths to record his mom, and my sister-in-law stayed, so she's constantly plotting against me. Since I kicked them out, they not only want to control me, but they have legitimate beef with me. I kicked them out, so they want to take revenge and kick me out too. And no, I'm not assuming all this. I heard Reeta on the phone with my MIL. I had to let my maid go because I couldn't entangle her with all the drama that was going on at my house. I had to do all the housework because Reeta wouldn't do a thing, and she kept making a mess. Raghav would do his part, but he was cold to me, and I was extremely stressed out. He wouldn't get intimate with me, and I badly wanted a solution to all the issues we were having. I was extremely tired and started to fall sick because of all the stress and exhaustion. I was really sick, so Raghav told me to go to the doctor, but didn't even accompany me. He told me to take Reeta, but I didn't want to take her. I went by myself. I bumped into a friend, Dylan, 26M, from school on the way home, and we decided to have lunch and catch up. When Raghav came home the same day, Reeta showed him pictures of me having lunch with Dylan and lied to him, saying that I was regularly meeting him and cheating with him. I was furious, and I told him that Reeta was lying. Raghav didn't say anything and just went to his room and locked himself up. I tried to explain myself to him, but he stopped talking to me. Raghav started giving me the silent treatment. I overheard that my mill had already found another woman for Raghav and that this time she wanted him to get Raghav married to someone else. My brother-in-law's wife, Pooja, 32F, called me to ask about me and Raghav. She revealed that my meal is going around telling everyone Raghav and I are getting divorced and that I'm an abusive bitch and a bad wife. She told everyone that I kicked my poor mill out and left her in the freezing cold. I told Pooja the truth, but Raghav wasn't talking to me because of the whole misunderstanding. My mill and Reeta were trying to tear us apart, and I felt like they were succeeding. Now Raghav is giving me the silent treatment everywhere. He isn't even talking to me at work. He listens to whatever bullshit his sister fills his ears with and has total control over what goes on in the house. I just don't know what to do when he isn't talking to me. The more days I don't clear it out, the more distant he's getting. I need a way to let him know that I'm not cheating on him, and I need to tell him what his mom is doing. If anyone has any suggestions on how I'm supposed to deal with this, you're welcome, and thanks in advance. Thanks for reading this and all the comments on the previous post. It means a lot since I can't really talk to anyone about this. I'm not telling my parents how much this is mentally affecting me. I'm acting like I'm really strong and I'll get through this, but they're really worried about me. Update 2. Hello, I'm here with another update on my previous post about my mill, SIL, and the changed dynamics between me and my husband. So, remember the friend I met, Dylan? I contacted him through social media, I didn't have his number, and told him everything that had happened. He agreed to help, but he said that my husband was a red flag. He contacted my husband with proof that we possibly couldn't be cheating because he doesn't live in the same town anymore. He sent all the proof that we had met after a really long time, and that he has another girlfriend that he's going to marry. Raghav believed him after a lot of convincing. He went through my phone too, but I was clean. We are back to talking terms, but nothing is the same anymore. It feels like the relationship has lost that spark that we had when we met. We had so much in common. The fact that he was so connected to his roots that I shared them attracted me, but the same traditions are choking me to death. I do not in any way want to show my culture in a bad light. I've met much better people, but my husband's family is crazy, and my mill wants to control me in the name of traditions and rituals. There was still no time for us to communicate in the relationship or have any sort of intimacy because Reeta wouldn't help with a single thing. We had to be present with her when we visited the lawyer because she refused to do anything herself. Work was piling up too, and Reeta was trying her best to create misunderstandings between me and my husband and wreck my household. I wanted to get rid of her, but Raghav thought that he needed to support his sister during the tough times. He assured me that in a case like this, she's bound to get maintenance, and things will be a lot better after her divorce. We went along with court proceedings, and it turns out Reeta had lied to us about Jay being abusive towards her. Reeta was the one who was being abusive. She would have Jay do all the chores and go to work as well. Reeta wanted to be treated like a queen, just as she was treated by her mother. She thought his apartment was too cramped and would constantly be asking Jay for money, but he refused to work. Jay came to court with bank transaction history, texts between them, and even voice recordings of her being abusive towards him. Reeta had to pay compensation to Jay for all the mental stress she caused him, and she wasn't at all entitled to even a penny from Jay. Guess who paid the compensation? It was none other than my husband. I probably forgot to mention that Raghav let my mill keep all the money she stole. Plus, Raghav gave her extra money to shop and to see the town. Now he even paid compensation for Reeta, which she should have done herself because she's clearly a criminal. Raghav thought I was being inconsiderate when I told him he shouldn't be spending the money meant for us on his family, especially since his father left a lot for them. I told him that spending money on his mom was okay up to an extent, but his sister, who could easily work and was an abusive freeloader, was a bit of a stretch. Raghav and I consistently fought over this. I reminded Reeta that I could send her to jail for aiding in stealing and being abusive towards me and my maid. She clearly didn't want to, but she had to submit to my threats and take a flight back to her country, which I booked as a going-away present. Finally, I have some peace and quiet to get my life back together and communicate with Raghav to solve our marital issues. My mill is pissed at me for sending Reeta back home and is constantly blowing up my phone and threatening me that she's going to get Raghav married to someone else. I've decided that I don't care what my husband does, but I'm definitely going to cut ties. Thank you again for reading my post and for all the time and support that you've given me. I really appreciate it. Update 3. Hello, everyone. I've been reading all your comments about how I'm supposed to go about fixing my marriage and have been giving it a lot of thought. I said I wanted to communicate with my husband, but it's been weirdly awkward between us. I'm mad at him for what he did and he's being apologetic, but he still thinks what he did wasn't wrong. He's saying he's apologizing only because it hurt my feelings, not because what he did was wrong. He's definitely been gaslighting me. I'm not really able to forgive him for not kicking out his mother sooner and for condemning me for making a video of his mom and sister doing the wrong things. He fought with me over deleting the video, but I said I was never going to do it because what's wrong is wrong. He made it much worse by believing that I cheated and giving me the silent treatment until the guy in question had to prove my innocence. I can't believe he doesn't trust me. And he didn't just mistrust me. He didn't even give me a chance to explain. As for my Reeta and my mill, they moved in with my brother-in-law Rajesh, 37M, and his wife Pooja. They had the same behavior they had at our house and theirs too. So Pooja did the obvious thing and kicked them out. Pooja also called Raghav and told him that my mill was trying to create misunderstandings and get him remarried. My mill cried over the phone to Raghav about how she's got the worst daughter-in-law ever, but Raghav told her she was the one being the bitch and told her to stop looking for a bride for him. I went to visit my parents and I discovered that my parents had given Raghav's parents a lot of money because it was a ritual. I got super pissed because I didn't know anything that happened. First, they take money from my innocent parents, and then they disrespect my parents too and treat me like shit. I didn't know how Raghav could let all this slide, but people are right when they say Raghav is a huge red flag. I called his mom and told her she could continue to look for a bride for Raghav because I was going to divorce him. I've had enough of him, and even though it seems like all our problems have gone and it's looking better, you can't really change the person or forget the past. Since I have all the proofs of being harassed by his mom and the fact that my parents paid his parents in the name of our marriage, I'm definitely going to be taking back a lot of money from them. Wish me luck, everyone. I'm typing this out as I'm getting ready to go to the lawyer I hired, and Raghav has no clue what's about to hit him. It's our anniversary in a couple of days, and I hope this surprise I planned really shocks him. I'm extremely grateful that Pooja is clearing out all the rumors about me and telling people the truth, so people there actually know how crazy his mom is. And no one makes the same mistake of marrying into that family. So his mom can kiss her dreams of getting her son remarried? Goodbye. I really appreciate all the people who supported me by reading and commenting on my posts. I was blinded by the fact that Raghav wasn't the one and the comments saying I should leave him. That made me think from that perspective. So thank you.